Henry Ziegland. The universe doesn't always act in chaos. Sometimes it keeps records. Cold, precise, patient. Picture rural Texas in the 1880s. Dusty roads, wide skies, lives ruled by pride and consequence. In 1883, Henry Ziegland made a decision that shattered more than a relationship. He ended an engagement, and the emotional fallout was devastating. His former fiancée, overwhelmed by grief, took her own life. For her brother, grief curdled into rage. Blinded by loss and driven by frontier justice, he tracked Ziegland down on his own land. No trial, no words, just a single gunshot. Convinced he'd delivered justice, the brother turned the weapon on himself, ending his life where he stood. But fate wasn't finished. Ziegland was still alive. The bullet had barely missed his skull, grazing his face before burying itself deep inside a nearby tree. A fraction of an inch had separated life from death. To the world, it was a miracle. To Ziegland, it was proof that he'd beaten destiny itself. That tree remained standing for years. Quiet, forgotten, with a bullet sealed inside its heart. 2 decades passed. By 1913, Ziegland was older, confident, and ready to clear part of his land. One stubborn tree refused to fall. The same tree that had absorbed the bullet meant to kill him years earlier. Swinging an axe felt pointless, so he chose a faster solution. Dynamite. He drilled into the trunk, packed the charge, lit the fuse. The explosion ripped the tree apart in a violent burst of splintered wood and flying debris. And then it happened. A small, warped piece of lead, fired years ago in anger, was hurled from the shattered trunk like it had been waiting for this exact moment. The blast turned it into a projectile. It crossed the clearing in an instant and struck Henry Ziegland in the head. He died immediately. The bullet that failed in 1883 completed its journey 20 years later, with impossible timing and flawless accuracy. A delayed delivery from fate itself. So was it coincidence? Or did the universe simply wait until the moment was right before finishing what it started? Walter Summerford. If fate ever chose a single person to test its aim, this British Army officer seemed to be standing right in the crosshairs. Picture the battlefields of Flanders in 1918. Mud, smoke, horses charging through chaos. In the middle of the advance, without warning, the sky itself turned violent. A bolt of lightning tore down from above and struck Major Walter Summerford mid-ride, blasting him from his horse and leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. His war ended not with a bullet, but with the sky. After months of recovery, Summerford left Europe behind and moved to Vancouver, Canada, hoping distance might also mean mercy. For a while, it seemed to work. Quiet days, fresh air, a life rebuilt piece by piece. Then the storm clouds returned. In 1924, 6 years after the first strike, Summerford was fishing along a peaceful riverbank. As rain rolled in, he did what anyone would do, took shelter beneath a tall tree. Moments later, lightning struck the tree directly. The electrical charge surged down the trunk and into his body, paralyzing the entire right side. Again, it took 2 brutal years of therapy before he could walk again. And somehow he recovered. He returned to the outdoors, returned to normal life, returned to believing the worst was behind him. It wasn't. In 1930, on a bright summer afternoon, Summerford was walking through a city park. No clouds, no rain. Witnesses said the sky was perfectly clear. Then, without warning, a single bolt of lightning dropped from above and struck him for the 3rd time. That one ended everything. He was left completely and permanently paralyzed, dying 2 years later, not from war, not from illness, but from what felt like a personal vendetta written into the atmosphere itself. But fate still wasn't finished. In 1936, for years after his death, a thunderstorm passed over the cemetery where he was buried. Lightning struck the graveyard, shattering one headstone completely. It was his. Struck 3 times in life, and once again in death. At what point does coincidence stop being random and start feeling deliberate? Robert Shaft. Books travel quietly. No passports. No records. Just hands, shelves, and time. In 1823, Colonel Robert Shaft, a London-based officer, loaned out his personal copy of a popular medical text, The Young Doctor by Dr. J.C. Du Bois. It was a casual gesture, the kind gentleman made without paperwork or expectation. The borrower was a trusted acquaintance named John G. Stevenson. The book was never returned. Years passed, then decades. The trail went cold. The volume likely drifted through second-hand shops, private libraries, and forgotten attics, its journey untracked and invisible. Generations lived and died while the book quietly endured. Then history blinked. In 1950, a London man named Davidson was sorting through a collection of old books he'd recently acquired. Most were unremarkable, but one leather-bound volume caught his attention. Time-worn, heavy, familiar in that way old books often are. He opened the cover. Inside was an inscription bearing the name of the original owner, Colonel Robert Shaft. Interesting, but not extraordinary, until his eyes dropped to a second handwritten note. Another name. Another moment frozen in ink. John G. Stevenson. Davidson froze. Because John G. Stevenson wasn't just a name from the past. He was his grandfather. The very book his grandfather had borrowed in 1823. The book that vanished for 127 years had somehow crossed centuries, owners, and chance itself, only to land back in the hands of a direct descendant. No map, no intention, no guidance, just a quiet, impossible return. Was it coincidence? Or do some objects remember where they belong and refuse to forget? Neville and Erskine Eben. Bermuda is small, just 21 square miles of land surrounded by endless Atlantic water. On an island that size, chance encounters are expected. But what happened there in the mid-1970s defies any normal definition of probability. It began quietly. In 1975, a man riding his moped along a calm neighborhood street was struck by a taxi and killed. A tragic accident, the kind that briefly shocks a community before fading into police records and memory. That should have been the end of it. Almost exactly 1 year later, his brother climbed onto that same moped. For reasons no one can explain, he took the same route, the same road, the same stretch of pavement, and history repeated itself. He was hit by a taxi and killed instantly. Even that coincidence alone would be staggering. Two brothers, same street, same vehicle type, 1 year apart. But the details didn't stop there. When investigators compared the reports, something horrifying emerged. It was the same taxi, driven by the same driver, carrying the same passenger. A perfect, brutal loop. The officers on scene reportedly struggled to believe what they were reading. On a tiny island, one taxi driver somehow struck and killed two brothers, riding the same moped, on the same road, a year apart, while transporting the exact same passenger both times. The odds collapse under their own weight. At some point, coincidence stops feeling random and starts feeling scripted. And in Bermuda, on that quiet road, the universe repeated itself with chilling precision. So how do you explain a pattern like that, when every logical explanation runs out? Violet Jessup, luck, or perhaps fate, had a strange way of following her across the oceans. She began her career as a stewardess and nurse aboard the RMS Olympic, the lead ship of the White Star Line's luxurious Olympic-class liners. In 1911, disaster struck. The Olympic collided violently with the British warship HMS Hawke. The hull tore. The ship was badly damaged, yet it didn't sink. Violet survived unscathed. One near-death experience down. After the repairs, she was transferred to the Titanic, the unsinkable marvel of the seas. On its maiden voyage in 1912, the Titanic met the iceberg that would etch its name into history. Chaos and freezing water surrounded her, but Violet was placed on Lifeboat 16, carrying a baby handed to her amidst the panic. Hours later, she was rescued by the Carpathia. Two disasters survived, yet her journey wasn't over. You might think she'd walk away from the sea forever. She didn't. During World War I, she served with the British Red Cross aboard the HMHS Britannic, the largest of the three sister ships, now converted into a hospital vessel. In 1916, while sailing the Aegean Sea, the Britannic struck a German sea mine. The ship sank in just 55 minutes. Violet found herself in a lifeboat pulled toward the still spinning propellers of the doomed vessel. She leapt clear at the last second, sustaining a head injury, but lived once more. 3 sister ships. 3 disasters. One woman who survived them all. Violet Jessup earned the nickname Miss Unsinkable, a living testament to the strange, intertwined destinies of these colossal liners. Her story is more than survival. It's a human embodiment of coincidence, luck, and the uncanny patterns that seem to follow some lives, defying explanation. It makes you wonder, did she simply escape by chance, or was something far stranger guiding her through the waves? Jean-Pierre Soutif. In 1947, in a quiet French town where the war felt like a fading nightmare, a young girl named Micheline Colomb was playing inside her family's home. The house was old, thick stone walls, the kind of place where silence lingers. Then she heard something, a sound so faint it almost didn't exist. A voice. It wasn't coming from the street or another room. It was coming from inside the wall itself. Startled, Micheline ran to her parents. They pressed their ears against the stone and heard it too. A weak, desperate cry for help, muffled by layers of rock and time. This wasn't imagination. This was real. They traced the sound to a section of wall bordering a cellar that had been sealed and forgotten for years. The authorities were called immediately. Tools were brought in. Stone was broken apart piece by piece. Behind the wall was darkness, and inside that darkness, a man. He was skeletal, barely conscious, still alive. His name was Jean-Pierre Soutif, a member of the French resistance. During the final, frantic days of the Nazi occupation in 1944, the Gestapo had walled him inside the cellar, entombed alive. For 3 years, he survived in total darkness on drops of water and whatever insects he could find. That alone was a miracle. But the coincidence goes deeper. During the war, Soutif had fought alongside a trusted resistance comrade, a man he relied on, a brother in arms. That man was Micheline Colomb's father. The very child who heard the voice belonged to the only family who might have recognized the urgency. Had anyone else lived in that house, the sound might have been dismissed as settling stone or imagination. Instead, a voice passed through a wall and found the one family connected closely enough to listen. Was it coincidence? Or did loyalty itself refuse to let a friend die forgotten in the dark? Little bastard. Some objects seem drawn to disaster. They carry misfortune like a shadow. Few are as infamous as James Dean's Porsche 550 Spider, nicknamed Little Bastard. On September 30th, 1955, Dean was driving it when a head-on collision ended his life. That was only the beginning. The wreck was sold to a custom car designer, George Barris. While unloading it at a garage, the car slipped, crushing a mechanic's legs. A warning? Barris didn't think so. He simply sold off the parts. The engine went to a doctor, who was killed in a race shortly afterward. The transmission went to another racer. He suffered severe injuries when it locked up mid-race. 2 tires sold to a young man blew out simultaneously, sending his car off the road. Barris, unnerved, loaned the mangled chassis to the California Highway Patrol for a safety exhibit. The first garage storing it burned down, yet the car survived untouched. At a high school exhibit, it fell and broke a student's hip. While being transported afterward, the truck lost control. The driver was thrown out and killed when the Porsche slid off the back. Accidents and injuries continued to follow wherever it went. Finally, it was shipped back to Paris in a sealed boxcar. When the train arrived in Los Angeles, the seal was intact, but the car was gone. Little Bastard vanished, never to be seen again. 1 car, countless injuries. A trail of death so bizarre it feels as if the machine itself had a will, a dark, vengeful purpose. Was it mere coincidence, or did Little Bastard carry its curse wherever it went? Mary Ashford. History doesn't always repeat, but sometimes it rhymes, in the darkest of ways. On May 27, 1817, in the quiet English town of Erdington, Mary Ashford left a friend's house after a dance, heading home under the night sky. By morning, her body was found in a water-filled pit. She had been brutally attacked and drowned. Suspicion fell on a man named Abraham Thornton, seen with her that evening. He was arrested, tried, and, against public outrage, acquitted. The case became a notorious unsolved tragedy, whispered about for generations. Now, fast forward exactly 157 years. May 27, 1974. Another young woman, Barbara Forrest, leaves a dance in Erdington. She, too, is found the next morning, dumped in a ditch just a few hundred yards from where Mary Ashford had been discovered. Also assaulted. Also murdered. The parallels alone sent chills through the local police. But the coincidences didn't stop there. The man arrested for Barbara's murder was Michael Thornton, a striking echo of the past, not just in surname, but in circumstance. And like Abraham Thornton, he was acquitted. Two young women, killed 157 years apart, in the same small town, near the same spot, after leaving a dance. Both prime suspects named Thornton. Both acquitted. It reads like a replay of tragedy, note for note, a chilling loop that stretches across time. Was it a coincidence? Or was history deliberately echoing its darkest chapter? Enzo Ferrari. Some coincidences feel like they leap out of the pages of a storybook. Others feel like they're chasing the laws of time itself. Enzo Ferrari, the legendary racing driver, engineer, and founder of the Ferrari empire, died on August 14, 1988, at the age of 90. His life had defined speed, wealth, and the fiery passion of Italian motorsport. The world mourned the end of an era. Just 2 months later, on October 15, 1988, a baby was born in Germany. His name, Mesut Ozil. He would grow up to become one of the world's most celebrated footballers, admired for his vision, technique, and skill on the field. For years, their lives were entirely separate. One man was gone. The other was just beginning. Then someone noticed a photograph. Enzo Ferrari in his later years. Next to it, a photo of Mesut Ozil as a young adult. The resemblance is uncanny. The nose, the eyes, the jawline, the hairline. They could be the same man, one life ending, another beginning. A famous athlete born only 2 months after a legendary industrialist died, sharing an almost identical face. It's a coincidence so strange it sparks questions about destiny, genetics, even reincarnation. Is it simply random chance? Or could some personalities be so powerful, so relentless, that they return, waiting for a new body to continue the race? Joseph Figlock, Detroit, 1937. A city buzzing with the hum of daily life. Joseph Figlock, a city maintenance worker, was sweeping the streets like any other day. Routine, mundane, safe. Then a scream cut through the air. He looked up. A small figure was falling from a 4th-story window. Without thinking, without hesitation, Figlock moved into position. Arms outstretched. A 1-year-old baby landed squarely in his hands. Unharmed. Figlock, shaken but uninjured, had saved a life in a single, impossible moment. A 1-in-a-million encounter that would have been legendary in any family. But the universe wasn't done. Almost exactly 1 year later, Figlock was working in a different part of Detroit, on a different street. A commotion above drew his gaze. And again, a small child fell from a high window. Without missing a beat, Figlock caught the toddler. Once more, both survived with only minor injuries. One man, a city of over 1 million people. Twice in 2 years, he happened to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Joseph Figlock wasn't a superhero. He didn't wear a cape. He was just a man doing his job. But for 2 families, he became something more, a human safety net, a guardian angel appearing in the most improbable of circumstances. Was it coincidence? Or does the universe sometimes choose a single person to rewrite fate itself? If these incredible coincidences left you questioning reality, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more mind-blowing stories. At Strange Wise, we dive into the mysteries that defy explanation, one story at a time. Don't forget to like and share, because the strangest tales are meant to be told.